Okay, welcome finally to this episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dai-Shihan Miller here from Warrior Concepts. I apologize, we had major technical issues, had to switch everything around. Apparently, if you're a regular follower, you can see that. I'm not normally right here, right? So anyway, again, camera issues, all kinds of things. So getting started about 40 minutes late. So for those of you who block out time to be on, I apologize, right? So anyway, so what we're going to do, we need to just jump right into this stuff. So what I've called this episode is the art of seeing weakness. Okay? So if you were on for Monday's Kuden podcast, then you know that the theme for the week is Kyusho, right? Kyusho. Break into this, right? For those of you who know the Japanese word Kyusho, you also probably know that by and large, most people translate this term as pressure points, right? And during Kuden, we dove into that and took a look at, how that's, it's not just a bad translation, it oversimplifies things, right? And so if we're really on a path for mastery, we really want to move in the right direction, then we need to be able to expand that definition. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the theme from today moving into Friday's masterclass will be in uncovering strategic Kyusho in our kata, in our technique. So the cool thing is you're going to be looking at things that you already know. Okay, now this Friday I will not be teaching Shidoshi Whistler. One of the guys that I have, he's 6th dan, 7th dan, something like that. He's covering class for me. It's my wife and I's anniversary weekend, so we'll be out of town. Anyway, but he's very, very good at what he does. He's also a shiatsu and bodywork practitioner. What that means is he understands a lot of these muscle chains and whatnot, where if we hit a certain point, what it actually does in the body, regardless of whether he feels pain or not. Okay, that's a cool thing, right? So anyway, we'll break this down just a little bit. Again, if you were on for Kuden, not required. If you were on for Kuden, you already got a little bit of this, but if you know me, then you know that I like to break down the kanji much more so that we can be more clear and understand the nuance as to what's being conveyed. As a matter of fact, if you can see this one, you can, right? So this bottom part right here, it's not a trick of the eye or whatever. It's the same kanji that's at the bottom of nin, okay, for shin or kokoro, right? So again, we're going to break that down a little bit. We're going to take a look at categories of, I'm calling these advanced Kyusho because we're getting you to get beyond dots and spots on the body, okay? Not that they're not there, right? We'll take a look at those. But what I didn't want to do is duplicate an earlier episode of Whiteboard Wednesday. I don't know, episode somewhere the first 5, I think, where I did Kyusho. But in that instance, what I did was I broke things down into 5 categories. We eliminated one because that had to do with using the points for health benefits, right? Healing, health, those kind of things, and took a look at them from how they get attacked. Okay, so we were looking at the points, right? In this context, we need to understand what this word in Japanese means, and it would be helpful if we understood what was being pointed to or pointed at, right? I apologize if I'm looking in like weird directions because I'm trying to orient myself. Normally I'm looking not only at the camera, but at the screen, and so things are a little jostled today. So anyway, I want to get this information out because it's important for what we're doing. Okay, just shift another piece of note paper over here that I have to make sure that I have everything that we're doing. All right, so the point that we're looking at here is how to unlock tactical advantage, right? Or even more tactical advantage from the kata you already know, from the techniques you already know. And I don't care if you know it's henka, I don't care, right? If they were passed down by the past masters, then they are embedded with, right? Almost the entire thing is an example or a model, not just of physical moves and not just of tricky tactics, but the exploiting of different types of Kyusho, different types of pressure points, right? Again, I really hate that term, okay? So what we're going to do is we want to look at or be able to develop the ability to see the strategic vulnerabilities that these kata were designed to exploit, right? To take advantage of. Okay, so seeing weakness, strategic Kyusho in your kata. Boy, got all kinds of wild stuff going on today. Right? Kata, okay, kata, right? Examples, okay, right? Not choreographed dance routines, okay. All right. So again, welcome. I apologize again for those of you who are live. If you're catching this as a recording, then none of that matters. But I'm always glad when folks check back in, right? So if you've been with me for a while, whether you're a student or you're just a follower and you're catching a lot of the stuff that I'm covering, I tend to describe kata in many different ways. But here, just recently, right, I pulled out an old lesson that I've used to explain kata using a metaphor of a delivery truck. Okay. So, and even Hatsumi Sensei has said that the kata is not the lesson, right? It's only an indication as to where you need to begin. So, what we're looking at here is learning the kata so we can learn the lessons that are embedded. Okay. All right. So we'll just keep moving, right? But the question to ask here is, what if the most important part of your kata wasn't the technique, right? What if it was what the kata was showing, right? What if it was what it was teaching? Okay. So again, today we're going to take a look at how the concept of Kyusho, not pressure points, is encoded into the traditional forms, and how advanced students can begin to decode them for real world strategy. Okay. All right. And my obligatory, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all those things, right? My setup is just all over the place here today. So, all right. Anyway, so let's jump into this kanji breakdown. Okay. So the kanji, or the way to write Kyusho, 2 syllables, 2 kanji. Q, right? Not Q. That's different. It's not 9. It's not class, like belt ranking below black belt. Q, right? Very different kanji. And sho, right? Sho. Again, this is not the show like in Shodan. Kinds of things, right? So Q, right? So Q is a complex kanji. So we'll take a look at a bunch of things. There are a couple of radicals and whatnot that go into this, but what we want to take a look at is very quickly name, and then I want to break this thing down because it is this is simple, right? This one, this points to something way more than like tagging dots on a body. Okay, so Q, this kanji can mean everything from sudden to urgent to sharp. Urgent, sharp, in many different ways. Rapid, critical, okay. It can also point to vital, something that's vital as in really important for something to work, something to function. Okay, that plays into this little character down here, right? Vital, and it can also imply or point to a weakness. Okay, and what I mean by the weakness is it's not a weakness as long as it's not exposed or it's not exploited. Okay, it can be seen as a strength, like someone he looks like a confident guy. Okay. But what's his confidence based on? Okay. Some people are confident because they are in the peak of health, age, fitness, that kind of thing. But if they got injured or they got ill and their appearance shifts, they lose a limb, whatever, they could still live a healthy, productive, successful life, happy, vibrant, all that, right? But if their confidence and their persona is all wrapped around that image, and that image gets distorted, right? Often you'll hear these people say, like, if they see somebody else that's crippled or old or injured or whatever, they'll say things like, if I ever get to be like that, just kill me. Okay. Other people, it's not wrapped around image; it's wrapped around their mind. Other people, it's wrapped around their heart and their compassion, right? If I ever get to be like that cold and unfeeling, man, just kill me, right? So very different, right? So, but these things here, the vital, rapid, critical, these are the ones that it really points to, okay? So sho itself just means spot or location. Now, this can still make it look like it's just spots on a body, okay? Even location. Where on the body is that spot, okay? But if you understand Ninjutsu, then you understand that we're always coming to things from the three bodies approach, right? And so is it located on the body? Is it located within the body, right? As a critical life-sustaining function, right? Or is it located somewhere else? Mind, heart, self-identity, those kind of things, right? It's very, very different, right? So from this base level here, Kyusho gets interpreted as having the meaning of a place where a sudden strike to the heart or the core or something that's very, very important, right, causes a collapse. Okay, causes a collapse, not just of body, but of will. Takuma Sensei, Hatsumi Sensei's teacher, didn't have any direct quotes about Kyusho themselves, these kind of things, but he was always referencing this idea that there's this crux, there's this weakness, right? And if we can exploit it, if we can cause them to expose themselves, or we can take it or inhibit it or whatever, right? We cause a collapse, a total collapse, not just in the body, but in the mind, in the spirit, like everything goes away, okay? Very much related to one of his quotes on the Koppo Jutsu, right? We're not just attacking the bones, right? We're attacking their ability to function, and so it's the structure that we're attacking. Okay? Anyway, so there's just another way to attack things, right? So I want to come back to this because Hatsumi Sensei has a certain way of teaching where he'll like swap out kanji and give it a new meaning or whatever. In this case, we're not going to have to swap kanji, okay? But there's this old classical way that it was meant to be translated. But interesting enough, here in the West, at least here where I live, we've got this saying that actually points to this area where I want to go. Okay, but let's break this kanji down just a little bit more here. And I know for a lot of you folks, you just want to know where to put your fucking foot, or excuse my language, you just want to know where you put your hand or your leg or whatever, and it's all about the technique. These are not the classes for you. Okay, these are going to make you think, and if that's a problem, then right click, left slide, whatever the hell it is. Okay. All right. So anyway, let's break this down a little bit because there's a bunch of things going on, right? So this part at the top right here, right, looks like this. Yeah, this way. Okay. That little piece, right? That can be pronounced kamai, not the kamai you're thinking. Okay. It can also be pronounced, yeah, kamai. How's my kanji? There it is. Oh, giri. Yeah, giri. Okay. Giri, as in cutting, okay? But what we're looking at here is it points to a sword or a knife, okay? And so what we're looking at here is it symbolizes a cut or danger or an action or decisiveness, right? So it can be a cut. It can be decisiveness, right? It can be an action. And what was the other one I had in there? Oh, yeah, danger. Let's not forget danger, right? Danger, right? So that's this first part. Next part down here, right, which is typically just this way, but there's this extra little stroke in there. It's the same thing in here, right? So this is an indicator of action, right? That's what I have here. Yeah. So action. There you go. So it's a stroke cluster. for that represents motion. Okay, something in motion. Okay, and I can't read my own damn notes. So what it points to, or what it suggests, is rapid motion, disorder, or speed. Okay, so speed, disorder, right, rapid motion, that kind of thing, right? And then we've got this thing at the bottom, right? This shin, this kokoro, right? This heart, right? Okay. So kokoro, okay? Kokoro can be translated as both heart and mind, because in the East, right, they don't see a difference, right? It's the core of who we are, right? So kokoro, this is, again, heart, mind, core, right? Heart, mind, core. So we're pointing at something way past dots, right? Right. So the presence of this piece in this kanji is really key, right? This is really important. It implies that Q, right? This Q is not just about physical urgency, right? But also about emotional or psychological pressure, right? So you're not just hitting a spot, right? You're striking something much deeper, right? And you're striking it on them where they keep it, right, inside, right? And it's felt at a core level. It is a core level vulnerability, okay? What I mean by that is, like, if we tag somebody, you get stabbed in the heart, right? Or you take trauma to the brain, everything gets shut off. Okay, that's a core vulnerability, right? If I had a cousin who helped a friend do a bunch of physical labor one day. It was in the morning, got dropped off at his house. Lunchtime, everything's fine. Agrees before he closes the door of the truck. Hey, I'll see you tomorrow morning. Same thing, same time. Finish up the job. Yep, absolutely, right? Gets halfway up his walk to his back door and drops like a rock. Had an aortic aneurysm. It popped. It's dead before he hit the ground. Okay, that is what we're talking about with this vital, critical thing. If it gets disrupted, everything, it's just this cascading effect. Everything just drops. Okay, so very, very different, right? So again, I've covered things where, and my big focus right now for my advanced students is avoiding seeing Kyusho not just as pressure points, but from a perspective of pain compliance. Okay, because if you don't get the pain compliance, then either you think it's not working, or you could do some serious damage to somebody like a training partner and not have a clue. Okay, because of what that thing does inside the body. Or if you're waiting for a pain response, or you're betting your life on that pain response, well, everything can go completely wrong. Okay. So because pain responses, they can be in the moment, they can be delayed if he's like extremely drunk or he's like on some kind of meds or whatever. They could be completely masked. The whole neuro loop, that feedback loop that causes the brain to recognize a pain signal, could just be gone, right? All kinds of trauma. People are born with neurological disorders where they can't feel things. Certain accidents or trauma through life, or even certain vocations, right? The way they're working, and welders and whatnot, right? Develop thicker skin in certain areas. And I've based on my experience, right? Certain types of contractors, carpenters and whatnot, keep swinging the same tool the same way, or the way they hold it, build up in certain areas. So it doesn't necessarily wipe out all Kyusho, but there's certain ones that just, you're just not going to get the effect that you want. And in other cases, person could go in the opposite direction. instead of comply, that pain could set them off, and that just jacks the situation up even higher. Okay, so all kinds of wild and crazy kind of things. Like I said, during Kuden, I'm putting together a Kyusho course for anybody that wants to go deeper into those kind of things. Law enforcement, EMTs, medical people, anybody that thinks that they might need to use that, but also areas, because I come from law enforcement myself, who might look at stuff like that. They've tried it before, and it didn't have consistent enough results for them to take it seriously. Or is it a bunch of these jagwagon gurus out there teaching like, wild, crazy kind of shit, right? And so they don't trust the stuff. So the approach will be, there's a little bit with pain compliance, but most of it is understanding how these things disrupt systems and go past it. So you guys are getting heads up on at least the foundation understanding of this stuff. Okay. So anyway, that being said, so Kyusho, I was taught to translate Kyusho from the perspective of a weak point, right? But as I've come up through the ranks and as I've done my own study and whatnot, like things just change. But there's this interesting thing, right? If we look at this from an omote and an ura, an obvious and a hidden kind of perspective, right? Remember down here, I said that this thing here, this was key in pointing to us touching him or attacking him or hitting him in a deep core vulnerability, which could be psychological, it could be emotional, it could be, again, identity related, all those kind of things, right? And so I mentioned this earlier. What's interesting is that most people from an omote outward perspective see Kyusho as pressure points that we either hit or press on, but what are we doing? We're hitting a nerve, okay? Well, ironically or coincidentally, the ura, the inside of this, is that there's ways that we can, as we say in the West, hit a nerve without touching it and disrupt him, cause his intent, his will, his focus, all those kind of things to collapse. Okay. And that's what makes something like this even more valuable in life than just on the battlefield or the back alley or whatever, right? On the job, workplace harassment, bully boss kind of thing, right? In the boardroom or just in general relationships and life, dealing with pushy salesmen, all kinds of shit, right? So anyway, let's keep on moving with this. And so again, hold on to that hitting a nerve kind of thing, right? So again, this for some folks, they're not going to want this so much because it's for them, Kyusho or pressure points is something specific, right? So, and that's fine. All right. So let's take a look at categories of advanced Kyusho, right? We're going to take a look at 4, right? We're going to look at the physical and non-physical Kyusho. Like I said, Sensei Whistler is covering my masterclass for me this Friday, and what he's going to do is pull a technique or 3, whatever fits into the 75 to 90-minute class time there, and take a look at how these things are in the kata. Where people miss them is that they're not written down in the densho. See, everybody wants to see the densho because the densho has the step-by-step techniques. But in the makimono, or the deeper understanding, or what you get from teacher to student who becomes teacher to student in this kuden or shinden fashion, is the juice, right? It's the stuff. It's the stuff that's not written down. It's the what one of my teachers used to describe is people want the ink on the paper. They want the lines that mean something, whether it's kanji or romaji or whatever, right? That's what they're looking at. But most of this art is in the blank space. It's on the white piece of paper, okay, or tan scroll or whatever. Okay. All right. So anyway, we'll break these down here a little bit, right? So what we're going to look at here is physical Kyusho. Okay. We're going to look at tactical Kyusho. Okay. We are going to look at psychological Kyusho. Oh, sorry, my notes shifted. For those of you who are normally you're checking in late and whatnot, get it, right? So physical, tactical, psychological, emotional, right? So I'm just going to write psycho-emotional, Kyusho, and cultural or conditioned Kyusho. Okay, so 4 types, 4 categories. If we were only looking at this, I've already done, go to the YouTube page, go to the live tab, go to, I don't know if it's under podcast or whatever it is, but you just see an alternating Kuden, Whiteboard Wednesday, Kuden. Just go all the way back or do a search on Kyusho on our thing. And so the one I did way, way back, it was all here. It was all here. Okay. And what I did was I broke it down into things that you could press, things you had to hit, things that, right? So we could break those things down that way. But Kyusho, the idea of Kyusho goes way past, like I said, just a point on the body. All right. So let's go back and break these things down here just a little bit. It's my timing like here, now that I'm running late and have to cover a class. Okay. So the physical Kyusho, right? What we're looking at here are things like nerve clusters. If you have or have a chance to get any of Hatsumi Sensei's old newsletters, right? If you're listening to this audio only, I just made air quotes. Right? I'm a big fan of those things. Those are densho. Okay, those are modern form of densho, where he wrote this stuff up. There were pictures included, those kind of things. Everything from parts of a sword to yari kihon to Kyusho, right? All kinds of things that were in there. Okay, interesting thing in the write-up that he did in, I think it was in a Sanmyaku. I think it was a Sanmyaku because he had Sanmyaku and he had one called Tetsuzan. Okay, Tetsuzan means Iron Mountain, right? It was one of his martial names. Okay, so what he did was, because he was always telling us, like, best ninja manual on the market is a Gray's Anatomy or a really good anatomy book where you can get in there and look at actually where these things are, right? How the body is built and how it's made up, right? So you don't have to like theorize through this bag of skin to try to imagine what things look like on the other side, right? And so in this one that he did on Kyusho, there's 2 pictures there. So one is this big blobby outline kind of thing, right? Of this picture that's in, I think, the Tagagi Yoshin scrolls. And so, these things were identified and whatnot. And then right next to it, right, there was a line drawing right out of like a Gray's Anatomy or something like that. The head kind of in this position and the neck opened up. And so on the one, on the hand-drawn version, ink and pen that was done way, way back, right? This point right here called Ukko, right? Your carotid pouch, right at the middle, about C3, give or take, right? Right here. So it's pointing at Ukko, and then it just has this line. It goes over to the same spot on this line drawing of an actual anatomically correct line drawing, right? And so you understand what you're hitting is the cervical vertebrae, so you can get that to happen. That's Koppojutsu, right? The carotid artery, the jugular vein, the phrenic nerve, the vagus nerve, and a whole bunch of other shits in there, right? That when you hit it, like, it's a kill shot, okay? And it's not until you see things like that you realize that Ichimo's no kata, right? It's a fundamental, but that doesn't equal beginner technique. It's a high-level advanced technique, right? There's certain things that I do, and it's an ideal. I get in here and I hit this point. That's a disconnect, but that's hard to see based on training. And when I get hit, my partner hits me and I roll and come back up. And well, both people are training, right? Because that could be missed or whatever, right? But just on the vertebrae itself, not just that you can get the vertebrae to do this and what's on the inside of that, right? Spinal cord. Oh shit! Click. Everything from that point down turns off. So be real careful when you're hitting your training partners. But on the vertebrae themselves, there are these things called transverse processes, which are early warning signs or signals. They're little devices that something is putting pressure on that part of the neck or whatnot. They flex, right? The body gets this response that kind of closes things off, right? But either way, these nerve clusters, right? So I highly recommend, don't just look at the dots on these ancient drawings. I know everybody wants it to do it the traditional or classical way. Why? Right? That was the best that they had technology-wise. We have shit that's way better than that. I don't mean the fight system. I think it's amazing that they figured this shit out the way they did, having no clear, well, they did cut people open that were dead. Look at things. So anyway, so nerve clusters, what else do we have in here? So skeletal structure, skeletal or structural weak points. So skeletal, structural weak points, right? This is where Kopo Jutsu comes in, structural weak points, right? So what we're looking at here is things like joints, okay? They snap, right? We have range of motion and flexibility, but there's a gap there. They're only held together with connective tissue, okay? Or bones that kind of thin out, like the bones in the hand, right? They're thicker on the ends. They taper in the middle. Same thing with the clavicles, right? They work that way. Your knees, an adult male knee can be blown out with about 65 pounds of pressure, right, per square inch, 65 psi, right? So a fairly decent sized child, okay? And if he's falling, he doesn't have to weigh 65 pounds, right? It's the pressure as it hits, okay? And that it doesn't matter if it's me, Schwarzenegger, you, whatever, about 65 pounds, right? 15 for here, not much, okay? We have vascular targets, right? Vascular, veins, right? Blood supplies, those kind of things, right? So we're looking at the carotid sinus, all that kind of stuff, right? And then we have sensory disruptors. Sensory disruptors, right? So eyes, ears, that kind of stuff, okay? Tactical, okay? Tactical has to do with timing and spacing. Okay? Somebody has a certain rhythm, whatever. Some guys are like jackrabbits on speed. Other guys are like, two on the Quaaludes, bad luck, that kind of thing. But if they get a hold of you, it's a done deal, right? But they have a certain timing or a certain rhythm to what they're doing, right? And so training to be able to speed up or slow down in an instant that throws off that timing, right? Or to use something that's really, really big in Bujinkan is this last second tricky timing to cause this person's body to be locking down to land that shot. And then that's when you move. And so, okay, you get this moment in time where they don't think about doing this. We don't think about doing certain things. So unconsciously or subconsciously, their body is actually depending upon the resistance of our body when they hit it, right, to not fall down. That's why people overcommit for power. They're hedging their bet that when they hit, right, there's this neutralization kind of thing. Again, it's not a left brain thing. It's just this natural thing we recognize, which is why when somebody misses, there's this, right, there's this little, and we can catch that. Even if they don't take a step, they don't literally fall off balance, there's a whole bunch of muscles on the opposite side of the body that have to fire to keep them from falling forward, right? In that moment, they're kind of stuck, okay? So we can take advantage of these things. There's also, with this one, let's see, what do I have here? So what we're pointing to things like that, but we're also pointing to like openings during attack commitment. Okay, openings during the attack. Okay, so what I mean by that is he can move around all covered up, right, and everything's good, right? Throws that jab, and then when that hook comes around, right, he can even be nice and tight in here this way, okay, and it's all fine unless I drop. And if I drop, there's a moment in time where I can access things that are not just open. And this is where we need to get away from techniques and like, well, I'm going to drop under and just hit him in the ribs. Okay, what are you doing? Well, I'm hitting him in the ribs. What does hitting him in the ribs at that moment in time do to not just that surface, but other things? Okay. When he comes around this way, right, certain muscles are firing, and so they're, doing their thing, right? Other muscles are getting stretched, like these. When that happens, these are stretched. And that's why we don't have to hit it hard. When we hit it, I don't care if he feels pain or not, the muscles are wired to not be damaged. So when they get hit, they contract. And if they're stretched out and they contract, the weakest points on muscles are where they connect to anchor points. So if I can get a muscle to contract, it tears at the anchor points. And so now it and everything else that's relying on it doesn't work as well. Okay. So again, I don't care if he feels pain. I don't. Okay. There are certain pressure points that you need him to feel pain. Okay. It's a pain compliance thing, but most of them are not. Okay. If I snap his finger and he's whacked on meth, I don't care if he can't feel the pain. He's going to still try to operate, and he's still going to try to pick shit up, and he's still going to try to do things, but nothing works because it's not connected anymore. Okay? This is the difference between thinking about Kyusho pretty much like an elementary school student thinks about spelling and sentence structure and whatnot, and a university student who's writing a thesis. Okay? One, it's about getting it right and spelling it right and simple sentences and things like that. Yay, right? And the other one is communicating high-level abstract ideas in a way that people smarter than them can look at and go, yeah, wow, come join us at this level. Good job. Okay. So anyway, right? So we have this, again, openings during an attack. We have exposing one's dead angles. Okay. So exposing, put that in parentheses, right? Dead angles. Okay. Here's an example of that. Right. Again, this is why Gray's Anatomy is really, really important. Okay. There's a space right behind the upper arm. Okay. That is a dead angle. Hatsumi Sensei would call them blind spots or unseen points. Okay, so when he strikes, we have a lot of these things where we like evade to the outside and whatnot, right? So we move up, and then people do their techniques and whatnot. But if you're paying attention, a lot of people train because they want to get the technique right. They don't train with an eye on the attacker intercepting that movement or the next thing they're going to do, like if they miss their mark. Okay, there's a knife defense technique, Ken Nagashi. So not really knife, it was a short sword back in the day. So you get stabbed, you shift to the outside, hand goes to the arm, you punch the back of the hand, right? Oh, that's the Kyusho, right? Punch the back of the hand so the knife goes or the sword goes flying, catching Omote Gyokko, he tries to resist, you kick him in the face, knock him down, all that kind of stuff, right? Except that the Kyusho started where the hand touched the arm. Okay? Actually, the Kyusho started where I moved, because there's also a spot right near here. Okay? Those spots are blind spots where the elbow can't get at it based on the way the body's built. So now if I'm too far away from that point, then he can just realign his body and hit me. But if I can position myself to that point, okay, so there's a Kyusho. Another Kyusho, this dead angle, right? Again, right here. But when I do that Ken Nagashi and I shift, I want my hand, we already talked about this one, skeletal structural. I want my hand to go to what I call the Musou Dori point. It's not the knob of the elbow, right? I may be partly touching that, but I'm finding that point right there. Right? It's not on any of the maps. Right? It's the space between the end of the humerus and the ulna radial bone connection right here. It's the actual joint. Okay? Because if I put my hand here, I'm controlling his shoulder. He can't get at me with the rest of his elbow. If I put my hand too high, he has control of his shoulder and his elbow again. If I put my hand too low, I'm on a bone. I got nothing. I don't have the elbow or the shoulder. Okay. Those are Kyusho. Okay. But these dead angles are being able to move into spaces that, how'd this get described to me? He can feel you. He's like the wind. He can feel you, or you're like the wind. He can feel you, but he can't get a hold of you. Okay. That kind of thing. Right. So openings that happen during an attack, exposing dead angles. What else do I have on here? Oh, rhythm breaks, right? Okay. So rhythm breaks. So what this is when he throws that powerhouse punch, yeah, he's coming back, and he's coming back really, really fast. The problem with that is there is a moment in time as it misses you to where he's putting on the brakes, but the laws of physics don't go away just because we want them to, which means we can't stop on a dime. I know how fast these things look, but there are moments in time that if we can catch them, you have an opening, right? So he slashes with a knife, and I shift so it misses, and I immediately move back in and catch this point, right? So because there's this weakness. And then when he comes back to do that thing heavy-handed, there's a chalk block right here, and that creates a problem, okay? All right. We also have psychological and emotional Kyusho, okay? Weaknesses in who and what we think we are, okay? So the first one is personal fears. Personal fears, or what we might call personal fear triggers, right? Fear of pain, fear of looking weak, fear of what other people are going to say if I got my ass handed to me and this person looked like they weren't a tough fighter. Okay, pretty much what's going to happen if I get jumped and somebody got their ass beat by an old man. That kind of thing, right? Another one is overconfidence. Okay, overconfidence. I know all this shit, right? Look at all the techniques I know, and so we automatically assume that we have the advantage. Okay, or we take up a position, right? What if we take up hiro komai? Right? This looks really, really weak to most base level fighters, because who does this? Or, right, you're terrified, right? So we can shove them into a position of overconfidence, but at the same time, who the hell fights that way? The number of people in other arts that I've sparred with doing ichimonji, the first thing they want to point out is, well, that's stupid, right? Your arm and your leg are exposed, right? I can hit or grab your arm and I can sweep your leg. And I go, yeah, you can. Right? If I don't know how to use this kamae, you absolutely can. Okay? But since this is floating, when you go for it, it's not going to stay there. And my kamae, my weight distribution and holding from the core means that when you take that sweep, see, now we're back in the rhythm breaks, because if I'm in a good position in the spot, I didn't move, I didn't bob and weave, I didn't break my own balance. He sweeps that leg, I clear, I can attack him while he's busy missing, because you've seen sweeps, the side of the knee, it's right there as it passes by. You don't have to hit it hard. If you hit too high on the knee, right, on the outside, you're catching the stabilizer muscles that are designed to keep the knee from moving sideways. But if I hit them, I don't have to damage them. I hit them, they tense up. Now his knee doesn't have full flexion, whether he feels pain or not. Okay. And that goes up this band and affects how the hip works. Okay. If I do catch it hard, I'm damaging the meniscus, right? It causes meniscal tear. And that's that little buffer in there, that little shock absorber in the knee. Either way, things are going to lock down to keep the body's wired to not let itself be damaged or damaged more. Right? So anyway, this is a big one. Ego, right? Ego, right? Especially in the tough guy posturing kind of thing, right? Okay. So if I want to see what his ego's like, right? And if I want to push him toward overconfident, what I might do is go, and then when he goes, and I go, see, then he thinks I broke. Just keeps that. The level of overconfidence very often correlates with how much he'll actually turn down the amount of effort he's going to put into it. Not that he's not going to come at you. Not that he's not trying to hurt you. Okay? But if he thinks he's dealing with this guy, he's going to ramp that up because he thinks he needs the extra force. Right? But if he thinks he's dealing with this guy, dude, and again, I'm talking about base level fighters because Hiro no Kamae, it's misunderstood by most people in the Bujinkan in Ninjutsu, right? This is your primary kamae for dealing with multiple attackers. Right? I know you don't often see it because the teachers that are doing it, like Atsumi Sensei, he's moving around no, he's not moving in Shizen. In Gyokko Ryu, this is called Hiro no Kamae. Right? But he knows where the baselines are. Okay? For us, for lower level folks, right? We're moving this way. Okay? This is a double-bladed Seigan. Okay? But it's very misunderstood, or at the very least, it creates suspicion. So the moron, the jackwagon who thinks that this looks weak, is just going to bull rush me. So in that case, this is an open bear trap. By all means, step inside. Okay? For the guy that I really have to worry about, right? The one that's technically proficient, really, really good, that kind of stuff, right? I'm going to have a certain look in my eyes which says, you're not getting through me. This is not going to go well. But my body looks like it's in a sacrificial lamb kind of position. I'm wide open, right? That guy who's smart is going to look at that and go, is he open or is he not? And that's going to create suspicion, which causes him to stall and be more cautious, which is what I need. I'm okay with the moron bull rushing in because he's going to overcommit, right? The guy who's not going to overcommit because he operates with surgical precision and he's a strategic thinker, I need him to be second guessing himself. Okay. Here's one, right? In psycho-emotional. Do I want that one there or did I put that in the wrong place? Yeah, I guess we'll leave it. We'll leave it here. Okay. I call these mama triggers. You know what a mama trigger is? Okay. I call his mom a name. He starts moving in and does your mom know what you're doing or is she just that retarded too? I want to get him to break from his fight style. I want to get him to break from his cool. Because if he's not in control of himself, he's easier to control. Please remember that. Because all this stuff works for us as well. As we're uncovering Kyusho to exploit on other people, make sure that you're not leaving yours wide open. Okay? And then I already talked about identity-based blind spots, but these also include like I'm a boxer, so I'll box him. Right? I'm a taijutsu guy, so I'm going to use taijutsu. Right? Or whatever, right? Where read some of the comments under my videos. If you want to laugh, you can look at the ones that say they call me Santa, and you know this guy can't do anything but eat at the buffet or whatever, which is really funny because I don't do buffets. But anyway, I'm talking about the ones who go, well, that's just stupid. That doesn't work. That doesn't. Okay. So, or that's not how you fight. Dude, stop doing all this stupid martial arts stuff. Everybody knows you just put on gloves, get in the ring, and fight like everybody else. See, they've got an identity-based kind of thing that as a fighter, there is a right way to do things. And so they don't realize that there's attackers out there that are going to come at them in ways that doesn't work. Like this guy or the guy with a knife or whatever. Okay? They're the ones that want weapons made illegal. They're the ones that want weapons to go away. They're the ones that will call somebody a name, right? You see it in movies all the time. Oh, you're a wuss, man. You got to use a weapon. Use bare hand. Screw you, man. Okay, you're the one who wants to hurt me. Okay, no, not going to happen. Okay, so what are cultural or conditioned Kyusho? Right, so culture sounds just like what it means, but it's not just like your culture, like I'm an American or I'm British or it's not that it's not that big, but it's also microcosm as well. Family things, group dynamics and whatnot, right? So here's one. So social habits. Okay. Social habits include things like shaking hands instead of bowing. Okay, shaking hands instead of bowing. Right. Where's the open line for attack? Okay. In that moment, can he yank me and pull me into a punch? Those kind of things, right? People often, because it's in the scrolls, it's the official kata, it's a lapel grab, or it's a sleeve grab, or it's a grabs. Why? Why might they do it? So how do you do that, and how do you shift things so that that's not a weakness? Okay, behavioral tells. Okay, behavioral tells, right? Could be as big as gang signs and just the local kind of sup kind of things too. And I know how that looks funny. My kids always say, "Dad, you're too old for that shit. Don't do that. Have fun with it." Right. But what we're looking at here is things like pauses, stances, body language. Right. Somebody kicked back, with the hat on sideways, whatever. Okay. That speaks to certain things. It also speaks to how they've conditioned their body and where they're probably stiff and where they're probably flexible and what they look for, right? Okay. And then the last one is, I already touched on this a little bit, but assumptions about your training, okay? Or you in general, okay? So I'll just put assumptions, okay? So as far as me, right? He's old, he's fat, that equals slow, right? That equals doesn't know what he's talking about because he's not a 20-something with six-pack abs, so he can't possibly know anything, right? So we have to be careful of those things. Those are weak points, okay? Because those are things that cause us to do things like dropping our guard or become overconfident. And these things, they're not individual. We just broke them out because they create a chain. Okay, just like there's points right back here. Okay, when you hit them, they don't really hurt that much. Okay, they could. They don't really hurt that much. Right, but there is a muscular and nerve channel chain that runs down your back to your hips that causes your hips to release and your knees to buckle, and the person drops to the ground. Okay. So if you see a Kyusho chart, right, and you're just assuming that I can hit it or apply pressure, whatever, and it's all about pain compliance, you could push on some of these things and go, shit don't work. I mean, it must have worked in the old days, or that works on Japanese guys or whatever, but I've never been able to make that work because it's not about that service level thing. Okay, there's a chain. It's the same thing over here. Assumptions, push ego, create overconfidence, right? Cause them to do certain things that are bigger or slower or whatever, that create certain rhythm breaks or create certain openings when they attack or dead angles the way they move because of that cultural stuff. Right? You got some guys that punch like this and other guys that are like, right? So there's certain things that are going on, but there's this chain that that occurs. And depending on how relaxed they are, how tense they are, determines what I can take. Vascular and sensory things like sticking your thumb in somebody's eye or popping an eardrum or whatever, right? Or vascular things and nerve clusters. Most people assume nerve clusters equal pain. Now, nerve clusters are the things that send electrical impulses back and forth between the brain, spinal cord, and the thing that this person needs to move, right? And if I tag that, And what I end up doing is disrupting. I irritate it, and it disrupts that signal. Okay, kind of like hitting this point right here. This chemo is one on both sides. Okay, you can find it's right above the pec, but below the brachial plexus, right, the top of the chest. Right here, there's a hollow. As soon as you find it, you'll know because it burns a little bit. Okay, you're touching the phrenic nerve. Okay, phrenic nerve comes out of the back of the side of the brain right here, behind the ear, down under the clavicle and down the chest, and plugs into the diaphragm, which allows for somebody to breathe. Okay, it's these signals that keep this thing doing its thing. Okay, it's just like hitting Godin. These points along it could be the ribs themselves or just under the ribs and whatnot, right? You're either attacking gallbladder or liver or spleen, those kind of things, right? Hitting the stomach wall, or you're hitting the diaphragm and you're creating diaphragmatic spasms. I don't give a shit if he feels pain. Okay, what I care about is getting that thing to do not what it's supposed to do, right? So if I tag the phrenic nerve, it stalls the diaphragm on that side to some degree, which means what it says in the scrolls is if I hit this, it disrupts the breathing rhythm. Yeah, what it does is stalls the freaking diaphragm, the muscle that causes you to breathe, and so you don't breathe so well. So now you're having a hard time getting the oxygen you need and getting rid of the carbon dioxide and stuff like that that is going to cloud judgment and whatnot. And yeah, good. And he doesn't get that back until he comes to rest, so long as that's not a permanent rest. Okay. So anyway, I think I've already mentioned kata and whatnot with Ichimonji no kata and whatnot. But what does either an uke nagash or an uke uch to that arm, right? There's certain things going on in here, but it's not just this pain thing, right? This skeletal structural thing also works when we're doing onikudaki, musha dori. People get that because we're like tweaking the shoulder, right? But these uke nagash, where you're shifting and lifting, or you're bunting, knocking the arm up and away. Well, see what that does is it like knocks him out here, as soon as the bones line up and he runs out of range of motion, then that, kind of carries his torso and all that. Yeah, I understand. Okay. But doing that, I don't have to worry about the Koppo Jutsu part. I can get it to this point and then punch the socket, cause the contractions because I caused a twist, torque, or a stretch in the muscles. I don't care if it hurts. Right? What I care about is making the next punch slower. Right? Or when he grabs me, he just doesn't know the strength that he normally has. Okay, it's how you break down somebody who's bigger and stronger. Right? You hit him in places that they don't know that they can be weakened in, because they assume strength here, strength here, strength here. Right? Means everything is strong. Yeah, no, I'm not punching those things. And if I do, it's going to be very specific things, because there's certain points that are on the muscle. Bigger you make the muscle, bigger you make the point. I can be sloppy, miss being super precise. Like skinny guys, you can be super precise. It's hard to hit that point, right? Because it's smaller, okay? But it's harder to keep them because they're wiring, right? Bigger guys, it's easier to hit the point, okay? And it's easier to restrict movement because their size already restricts movement. Okay. Anyway, all right. So on Friday's masterclass, Sensei Whistler will be going into some of these things with the kata so you can see them. But just with this stuff here, start looking at your kata from the initial punch, right? With Ichimonji no kata, he throws a punch, right? If I just stop doing beginner stuff where, ant farts in the corner, so I automatically start moving. If I'm just willing to let the shot land, okay, your brain won't let that happen, right? Your amygdala, your hypothalamus, and all that kind of stuff are already going to start making things happen. But as soon as your left brain goes, hit me, please, the survival mechanism in your brain goes, right? But give it like an extra quarter of a second. That thing comes in, right? You're also going to vet your training partners, because those who won't really hit you will pull. Well, you were supposed to move. No, you were supposed to hit me. Why would I move and show my stuff to somebody who basically is throwing what would be the equivalent of a feint out on the street? That would be stupid. So I want you to land, okay? I'm going to be moving with it, so even if you hit me, it's going to irritate, but that's another exercise for fudoshin, right? Getting through that kind of thing, right? So, but what I want to trap him. I want to catch him. So as his body and his arm brace for impact, that's when I want to slip it. I want to be the door in the comedy movie that when somebody goes to bash it in, just as they go to hit it, somebody opens the door and they fall in. So the first Kyusho in Ichimonji no Kata and a lot of other techniques, right, is the timing as to when you move. That's what creates more air time, hang time on the arm, even for the guys who do this, because you're not doing uke nagashi on somebody that does that, okay? So, but if I can get him to stall a little bit, I have more time to tag that. And then where I tag it, what that makes the arm do, what that opens up as opportunities, right? Then you have, the things that you can hurt, right? But don't forget that unless he jumped you and he's already on you, you have opportunity to tag, strike a nerve, right? On these psycho-emotional and these cultural things, especially psycho-emotional ones. Okay. Somebody moves in on me, right? Okay, look, this is going to go two ways. You're going to win, and a bunch of people are going to laugh at you because you beat up an old guy. Or you're going to lose, and a bunch of people are going to laugh at you because you got beat up by an old guy. But it's not going to go like that because I'm not going to demonstrate it on here because of YouTube and their policies and whatnot. But when I pull my clip knife and go, you brought fist to a knife fight, see, that's not going to go well. Okay? Well, it's supposed to be a fair fight. It's not a fair fight. I didn't agree to be here. You are an aggressor. Okay? A weak point for martial artists and self-defense people is not knowing the difference. Trying to do the fair fight thing. Okay? Well, he didn't have a weapon, so I'm not going to draw a weapon. Okay? Another weak point for martial artists and self-defense people is not knowing the law that's around the self-defense doctrine and how to be able to defend yourself against the legal system and how to structure those kind of things well. Okay. So anyway, right. But there's way more to Ichimonji no Kata. People leave those things behind way, way early. Okay. But what I want you to do when you're looking at your kata, and not just from a defense or a counter or the physical moves, right? I want you to look at these things as Kyusho. Distance, angle, unseen anatomical Kyusho that appear and disappear at certain points, momentum or timing windows, I talked about that one, right? Emotional or mental overcommitments. Fuck, I'll kick your ass. Okay? Beliefs or style assumptions, right? He thinks you're blocking, but you're entering. Okay? Uke nagashi. If you think you're blocking when you're doing uke nagashi, then you're blocking and he's right. I did a whole whiteboard Wednesday on uke nagashi. It's not blocking. Okay? Even when it looks like it's blocking. If you're blocking, it's uke dome. Right? I know, and the Bujinkan terms tend to bleed together because people just pick one and run with it. But uke nagashi, uke uchi, and uke dome, three aspects of the same thing that people get stuck on. Okay? All right. Again, revisit your kata. Okay? Where are the holes that he left open when he does each move? Okay? How's this kata? How's whatever the kata you're working on? How is that showing you how to exploit those Kyusho? Some of those things that I listed, or just how does it open up certain ones that you can tag them? How does it set him up for another one that he's not going to be paying attention to, or that's in a blind spot? Those kind of things, right? Okay, so quick summary here, right? Again, Kyusho is more than anatomy. It's more than dots and spots on the body. And it's certainly more than pain compliance when it comes to, again, those points, right? Pressure points, right? But it is pain compliance if you're tagging things or rubbing salt in wounds or setting him up for a big collapse, right? Gets all puffy, and when he does that, hitting the diaphragm and causing he's already tightened up muscles, and then he can't breathe. I'd say nothing more beautiful, but the art's full of stuff like that. Okay. hopefully this will have you between this and Friday's class looking at kata as a blueprint for recognizing these things during chaos, because that's what we're doing. A kata is a model designed by past masters who could already do this stuff, that are examples of the principles and concepts used under pressure for you to make sense out of the chaos. Okay. So again, Friday's masterclass is going to dive into application-based Kyusho tactics, not just the tagging, right? Controlling versus destroying, right? With choices, with your choices, right? And when pain compliance works and when it's just going to get you killed. Okay. Anyway, so let's see. I've got one more thing down here. Quote. Yeah. So don't just memorize the moves, right? Understand what they mean. Okay. That's the difference between being a technician, somebody who can do the moves, right, and being a strategist, somebody who knows which moves to control things in what way. Okay. So again, did I, for whatever reason, there's not an overlay on there that should be, but for this week, there it is. Okay. So don't go to the one we used to have that just said Friday virtual training or something like that, right? So onlineninjaacademy.com, hidden-kyusho-masterclass. Page is already set up. Get yourself all set up for that kind of stuff. And whether you can make it for the live Zoom class or not, you'll get the recording. And yeah, that'll complete all the training for this week. High-level Kuden, tactical level, Whiteboard Wednesday, and physical technique example training during the masterclass. All right. So that's it. Again, I apologize for the late start on everything. Hopefully everybody still got what they needed to get. For those of you who are watching the recording, because the time just got all screwed up, I apologize. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, no harm, no foul. All right. That's it, guys. I will see you next time. Be safe and train hard. See you.